We literally booked our car like 2 days ago. Um,
Welcome, everyone, to our first college and career session of the new year. I'm Emily.
And I'm Claire. We're members of ShinShin Youth Cabinet.
Today, we're really lucky to have with us, all the way from the East Coast, Andrew Zhou. Andrew is a founder of Kona, which is only one of his many accomplishments, and he also speaks and writes about high performing remote teams, psychological safety, and vulnerable leadership. If you have any questions for Andrew, you can drop them in the comments, or I guess if you show up today, you can drop it in the chat.
Okay, so to start, Andrew, do you want to give us like a little self introduction where you're currently at, your occupation, your experiences throughout life with like high school and college and stuff?
cool, let's do it. Current day, I've I think I have a pretty entrepreneurial background. Actually, maybe even starting back in college, I went to UCLA, decided to drop out after 2 years because I felt like it wasn't really for me. Started a company called Kona, which I ran for about 4 years. We grew it to an 11-person company, remote across the US and Europe, which is a lot of fun, but a lot of good lessons there. Throughout that entire 4 year process, my parents were constantly trying to get me to go back to college. Politely, I declined every time. And now I'm working on a new AI startup. So we're helping people supercharge their research processes. Happy to go into that more if you want.
I'm sure a lot of us are really curious about this, especially because Xinxing Youth Group is comprised mostly of high school students. But could you tell us a little bit about your decision to or like how your college admissions process went and like how high school built up to that for you?
Man, that was a long time ago. I think for me, like ShinShin is based in the Bay Area, right? I'm not sure how your experience was here, but for me, there was always an emphasis on college ever since I want to say like 12, 13. Like it was all about how can you fill your resume up with the most attractive extracurriculars, and how can you really make these almost shadow like college admissions officers feel impressed by you as a person. I felt like that was the wrong thing to focus on. Yeah, I felt like the emphasis on the resume was the wrong emphasis because I in hindsight, a lot of the things and a lot of the extracurriculars I was doing felt like they were to make somebody else happy, whether that's my parents happy or it's shadowy college admissions board happy or something of that sort. And at the end of the day, those activities weren't really the things that carried my application. I think what they want to see is more authenticity. It's more like, who are you as an individual? What do you care about? What are your motivations? And like a stacked resume is not going to convey that. And so I went into this college admissions process expecting a lot more out of what I ended up getting in terms of like college acceptances. And at the time, I was just distraught. Luckily, I got into UCLA, which is not a bad option at all. But I wanted to go to an Ivy, for example, or I wanted to go to Stanford. Ended up getting rejected from every single one of them. And in hindsight, I think it was because I just wasn't an interesting person because developed I didn't really develop my own personality or my own perspective, because all I was really doing was trying to make other people happy throughout that entire process. I think if I were to go back and redo it, I would really stick to what made me authentically myself and really present myself in as authentic of a way as I could.
So speaking of like what you were presenting to the colleges, did you have an interest in like entrepreneurship in high school or early on, or did that sort of develop in college or after college? And did you like
Yeah.
present that? Yeah.
So I started my first business when I was in high school. I was just I was just teaching kids how to code, essentially, you know. The reason I did that was because my when I was a freshman in high school, I was doing some volunteering, um, everything that sort. And then that volunteering turned into a more like, oh, hey, can you like take what you're doing volunteer work wise and just spin it out and do it over the summer as well? And I was like, sure. And it was all in education. And so I ended up doing that, and then eventually decided, oh, you know, really enjoy doing things by myself and starting things. And coincidentally, I really wanted to have enough money to pay for college. So I started a small business, ended up doing decently well, wrote about that a lot in my college applications, of course. I feel like that was probably one of the most authentically me things that I did throughout my high school experience. Um, but yeah, I mean, ever since then, I think just sticking to those values, those interests throughout college felt like entrepreneurship was always just for me.
Wow, that is okay. I'm a sophomore in high school right now, and I'm nowhere near that yet. So, um, a question that I personally had was like, what are your thoughts on the concept of like a dream school for like when you're in high school? A lot of people have a specific like one or two schools that they really want to go to after graduation. Do you think like having that is a good thing, is a benefit for you, or do you think it's a little unrealistic?
I mean, sure, why not? I mean, I think it's always good to have goals. But the thing I dig into is like why, you know, why is that your dream school? And I find that a lot of people in high school tend to have dream schools for the wrong reasons. You know, like I want to go to this school in the middle of nowhere because it has a high, you know, U.S. news ranking or something of that sort. But I actually think that like my experience at UCLA, the reason I chose it was because it was the quote unquote best school I could you know go to at that point in my life. But the reason I liked it so much there was because of the environment that I was in, the people that I surrounded myself with, and you know, the fact that we were in the middle of LA, or actually the nice part of LA. So that was a huge factor in my my experience there in the first place. So I mean, I don't know. I think it's a good thing.
So you're clearly very successful, which is really, really good. But do you think that you ever had any moments that were really challenging and kind of made you doubt whether you made like the right decisions in like dropping out or starting a business and stuff like that?
Well, first of all, I'd say getting there. Not successful, going to be successful. It's always an uphill climb. There's always doubts, always doubts. So my little brother is in high school as well. I think he's also in the ShinShin organization. But we've been we've been talking a good amount about this. I think there's a couple of kinds of doubt. The first is self-doubt and feeling like you're not good enough to do something. There's also the you're not doing well at any given moment and you're like, damn, I'm not doing very well. So it's like almost like the external doubt of, oh, I'm not doing very well. What am I doing? And that both happen all the time. In fact, they're extremely related to each other. I think one of the biggest things that I had to overcome was the self doubt in the first place. And actually, it's really interesting because the self doubt was a thing that was holding me back for a number of years. I think actually coming out of high school and coming out of the Bay Area, the confidence was actually the one single big unlock for me in terms of trying to really move forward with my life. So um, it just unlocks things in unspeakable ways. So I think it would have been a lot better for me if I were to just have like blind confidence in myself and just go forward with whatever I wanted to do, as opposed to like always doubting myself or always like holding myself back in a way. I think there's always going to be hitches, always going to be hitches, and that's not just unavoidable. I've learned to almost embrace them in that like, you know, when something goes wrong, it's sometimes kind of fun to figure out how to overcome those challenges. Like I always say, like life is no fun without its challenges. If everything was easy, then it would be like kind of boring. And I always felt that that was the case. And so I don't know, just I think there's always going to be a lot of challenges and always going to be setbacks. I think the key is to not let it affect you as much, and not let it defeat you in a way, you know? You don't want something to happen and for you to feel like, oh, I give up. I'm done with this. I can't do it anymore.
Clearly, yeah, you've emphasized that there's always hardships along a journey to success. Do you think there were any particular people, events, or other things that you could credit like your success to, or like that helped you get to where you are now?
On the people side, I would say it's less of one person and more of a community of people. I actually think that that's one of the most important things, and actually one of the most important things when choosing a college in the first place. It's like what kinds of people do you want to surround yourself with, and that it's really really powerful because it's like the saying, you always want to feel like the dumbest person in the room, but also beyond that, you always want to feel like the dumbest person in the room with other people with your shared values. Like for me, Um, I've always wanted to do something big with a small team or something of that sort. And so I've surrounded myself with a lot of people who share those values. Um, I think that's actually probably one of the most important things that you can do for yourself. It's like how do you surround yourself with the right people?
So I wanted to ask kind of when you decided to like when you decided to drop out, was there anything specific that made you like go through with that? Did you like spend a lot of time considering, or was it kind of just like, oh, I always knew I wanted to do this and like I know college isn't really for me, so I decided to drop out, or like was it kind of a longer process or more complicated than that?
Yeah, so my process there was I built a business in high school. I went to college and immediately entered the rat race of I was a computer science major, very popular amongst graduates of Bay Area. And so I immediately entered the rat race of trying to get like a prestigious internship, like everybody else around me, right? That was the people that I surrounded myself with. And so because everybody else was doing it, I was very much influenced to feeling the same kind of it's like prestige, right? And so I spent my first year in college, a lot of my time, my first year in college was spent on that. I ended up interning at Apple and spent 3 months at Apple. I did enjoy it. I think it was a lot of fun, but I also realized that, um, it. I think we were a small team within a big company, which was nice. But also, there's not much impact you can make unless you really move up in the value chain. Everybody there was 3 times my age. It didn't feel like the place where I could really go do the work that I've always wanted to do my entire life. And so, like, it's kind of like everyone glorifies these big tech internships, but once you get there, for me at least, it was so far from what I wanted to do for myself that it just didn't feel right for me. So I guess in a sense, you could say that I've always wanted to drop out. Um, ever since then, I was like, I just want to start something that does well enough to escape this, college startup ecosystem. And so, it's not like it was planned. It was just, it'd be nice if I didn't have to go to school anymore. And so I spent the entirety of my second year in college. This was 20, I want to say 2019 to 2020. Just really going all in on this business. I skipped all my classes. Also, don't tell your parents this. But I skipped all my classes. I think at the end, I ended up going to like 7 or 8% of my classes. Like I went to so few of my classes. I cheated in all my homework, which is really bad and you should not do. But like I did, and it ended up working out really well for me. And I optimized all of my classes. Like, how do I spend as little time as possible in my classes, but get the highest possible grade, so that I can spend all my time doing this other thing that I'm actually passionate about. I really enjoy doing, and I think could go somewhere one day. Um, Around I want to say February of 2020, we got an email from an accelerator program called TechStars. They invested 120 grand into our company. And so it was 3 of us. and we were like, 120 grand can probably last us a year, so we might as well go all in. If a year passes, nothing comes of it, we'll just go back to school, whatever, no big deal. And so I was so happy with that. I was like, I get to drop out. I feel like school is not valuable for me anymore at this point. I feel like I've learned what I needed to learn. I feel like I had a community, whatever. So I just went out and did that. And I mean, that 1 year lasted us for 3 months. We ended up raising more money, ended up hiring a team, kept going with it, and it just never really looked back from there. So I think like dropping out for me has always been, like, for lack of a better way to say it, dropping out has always felt like something on my bucket list in a way. It'd be nice if it happened, but I there would have to be some prerequisites for it to happen in the first place. And I had to like ease my parents into the idea of it in the first place, but they were pretty accepting, I think. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a thing that happened because all the pieces fell into place.
So the skipping class part was actually sort of interesting because a few weeks ago we interviewed Alex, who goes to MIT, and he said that a lot of, like, he said college is kind of where you just stop going to classes, and a lot of people just like go into buildings and start doing parkour and stuff. And he goes to MIT, where like the whole stigma is that everyone is really like academically based and stuff. Is that sort of what you experienced too, or do you think your school is, like, the culture of your school is pretty different?
I would say a lot of people skip class. I would agree with him. College is probably when you stop going to class. I think college is honestly just it's more about independence. Like school offers you structure in that like it gives you a cadence, it gives you deadlines. A lot of people I found need a cadence and deadlines to learn really well, and that's fine, right? But I think a good chunk of the people I knew, like, they would go to a lecture and it would be like an hour and a half lecture, and like the lecture material would go in one ear and out the other. It's like, why are you spending an hour and a half in a lecture? For me, I learned really, really well just by reading and by absorbing information, by having conversations with people. And so I just never went to class because it was never valuable for me, because I just show up to class and I'd be doing something else, right? Like it was just not helpful at all. Um, I think like the reason I say college, I feel like, is about independence, because you do get the free, like, sure, like they'll professors will minus points and give you a B or a C or whatever if you don't go to class. But at the end of the day, you're not required to go anymore, and so you can really learn the way you want to learn. And for me, the way I wanted to learn was cramming for 8 hours right before the midterm, and not spending as much time as I had to on the class. Um, you know, I I do think it's about figuring yourself out to an extent, like figuring out your own learning style. Whereas high school, you have to go to class, you have to get good grades, you have to do all these things. College, you don't have to do that anymore, and you can really just explore what you want to do. I guess unless you're going into like a grad school program. I'm more talking about like a CS path or some path where grades don't matter as much. Of course, like can't speak to like a pre-med path where you're going to um, uh, another med school that like requires like a 3.9 GPA to even be considered or something like that.
Do you think that the idea of going to a good college or like a ranked college is like glorified in a way, especially in America? And do you think it's worth it to like almost like drain yourself just to go to those colleges?
Definitely glorified in the Bay Area, I'll say. Um, I think the most important part about college is just going to be the community of people that you surround yourself with. Like it's kind of a feedback loop where the most talented people are probably going to be at the top ranked colleges. And so you want to go to those colleges so you can surround yourself with really smart people. Um, I would say that it probably is valuable to go to a very good college because you get that community in the first place. I think the brand of the college is very overrated. So obviously very sector specific, because if you want to go into finance, which I don't know why you would, but if you want to go into finance, you do need like a top degree or whatever to get a role at one of the top banks, or they still care about that stuff. If you want to go to med school, maybe it matters a little bit less, but it still matters a little bit. If you want to go into tech, nobody cares. Nobody cares about where you went. Beyond your first job, maybe your first job will care. Every subsequent job won't care. Like the way that I calmed my parents down in like the idea of just dropping out was that I just gave them confidence that I'd be able to find a job. And like honestly, in tech, nobody cares about whether you dropped out. Actually, it might be a positive signal that you dropped out, which is really funny. I do think it's glorified. That being said, I think there are benefits. I think people miss the benefits. I think people don't realize or understand the actual benefits that they're reaping from these things. So like people blindly will try to shotgun to a bunch of different top colleges. They will curate their resume to look as good as possible to all these top colleges. They'll shape their entire lives to getting into one of these top colleges. And I think that when it gets to that point, it's destructive, and more times than not, you'll most likely just not get in because you're optimizing for the wrong things. I was optimizing for the wrong things when I was in high school. I was trying to do all the impressive things and do whatever my mom wanted me to do, and all that kind of stuff. But in the process, I kind of lost my own perspective. I lost my voice. I lost what made me me. I do think that there is an over emphasis on getting into a good college in the Bay Area, and I do think it's very destructive because I think the best thing you can really do in high school isn't actually optimizing and doing impressive things or whatever. I mean, obviously that's really important, but it's like finding yourself, finding what you want to do, and then going out and doing impressive things that align with what you actually want to do.
Speaking of the people and the community that you meet in college, I don't think we've asked you about like the people that you started and built your company with. Did you meet them in college, and like any funny stories surrounding that?
Any funny stories surrounding that? Man, I don't know if I can deliver on funny stories. I can definitely deliver on the former question. Yeah, I did meet them in college. The first guy, his name is Sid. I met him through clubs that I was in my freshman year. And we just started working together on just random things, like we're just coding up projects together, and turns out that we work pretty well together, so we just decided to start working together in a more like official capacity. Our third co-founder, Yen, I met them through we were co-organizing as marketing leads a hackathon in LA, and which was a lot of fun. And I was like, this seems like a really cool opportunity for us to like deepen our relationship or deepen our like working relationship. And so they were down too. And turns out the three of us work pretty well together. Yeah, I don't know. No real funny stories there. It's really just like we met, we started working together, it worked out, and that's really that's really how that came to be.
I wanted to ask earlier, you said that like it was around 2020 when things started happening for you. Do you think COVID had any effect on like your startup, and did it hinder your progress or anything like that?
Oh, it did the opposite. It accelerated our progress. I think so. We're maybe some context as to what we're trying to build. We felt like there was, as soon as everybody went remote, nobody really knew how to like build a good culture. I'm sure you all have felt like the attendance in class and the engagement in class just dropped off a cliff. Nobody listened to their teachers anymore. People would camera off, be really sad. And, it's like, how do you engage a classroom? In the same way in the workplace, it was an even more pronounced question. How do you engage your workforce? How do you make sure that your people don't show up and are just totally disengaged, don't care about the work anymore in a way that wasn't true when everybody was in the office and in person? And we felt like a lot of other companies, they were trying to replicate the office experience. So if you think about the office experience or maybe even the classroom experience, it's like, what's valuable about that? Oh, we would have serendipity where like multiple people would like crowd around a water cooler or a coffee machine and talk. So there were a ton of startups that try to replicate that. We felt like that was the wrong approach. And we wanted to build software to help people build up habits to maintain a great remote culture. And so because we were focused on like the remote work aspect of work, we we always believed in remote work. As soon as COVID hit, everybody else started believing in remote work. And so there's a lot of investor interest right after COVID hit, and not just investor interest, but customer interest as well. So it really accelerated us, I would say. And actually, I wouldn't attribute the ability for us to get out of the college ecosystem to COVID, but I would say it played a part.
I looked a little bit into Kona, which is the company that you established, and I found that it uses artificial intelligence. So, what are your thoughts on like the rise of artificial intelligence? And do you think it'll, I don't know, do you think it'll in general benefit like I guess the technological boom that we're having right now? Or do you think it'll turn into something that gets like abused or exploited?
I think it's generally an extremely positive thing that will have extremely negative short term effects. So what I mean by that is I also have a lot of opinions on this, but what I mean by that is I think in the short term, it will empower people to learn less and understand less because it reduces the friction that we have in our lives. So, as an example, instead of it's a good example. Instead of, let's say you're taking AP Computer Science and you're given an assignment. Instead of writing the code yourself for a question, you'll ask ChatGPT and it'll write the code for you perfectly. And so, in the short term, I feel like there's going to be a dip in terms of how much people actually understand the concept that they're taught. Um, I think that's probably true across coding and computer science. It's probably true in English, in math, physics, all of these different concepts, because you don't have to go through the pain and the friction of writing all that code yourself, and therefore you're probably going to learn less and understand the concepts less. In the long term, I think it's going to be a 10x productivity boom in terms of if you don't have to write the code, you can just think exactly what you want to code up and it'll write it for you. And that's a 10x improvement in how productive we're all able to be. Um, I would say that like teachers should absolutely embrace it and use it as a mechanism to help their kids learn more and faster instead of banning it outright. I've seen the latter more than I've seen the former, but also I haven't had too much exposure to high school.
With all the busy things that kind of go on in your life regarding your company and like even when you were in college, do you think you were really good at like balancing your work and your life outside of academics and career? Or like, do you want to talk about some of the really good times that you had in college or in your career?
Work-life balance. Just curious, where did this question come from? Is that something you guys are thinking about a lot?
Well, personally, like I think once you get to the later years in high school, especially for someone with a lot of extracurriculars, if you have a lot of extracurriculars, I find that it's getting a little harder for me and some other people I know to find room for all that amidst like schoolwork because it's getting more and more rigorous. And as you go
Yeah.
into college and like into a career, I feel like it'll get even harder. So, do you have any comments or advice on that?
Yeah, I mean, my comment on that is I personally have no work-life balance, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Like for what I mean by that is, like I actually think work-life balance is a really interesting topic because everyone has a different version of what balance means to them. Like some people want to just kind of get their work out of their way and live life and really enjoy life. Like these people maybe are going into tech and they want to work 5 hours a day and live their lives for the rest of their lives. And that's a very valid way to live life. For me, I'm the opposite. I want to make an impact on this world in one way or another, and I know that that requires a lot of work, and not just work, but like work that I really, really enjoy doing. I'm truly passionate about. And so the first thing I'd ask is like, are these extracurriculars really something that you're interested in doing? Like, is it something you enjoy? Um, I think that's like oftentimes I find that the answer to that is not really. Like I don't really like to go take piano lessons every week. I just do it because I know that it'll look good on my college resume, for example. I think that's the first place to start. Like when we talk about work-life balance, what does work mean? And is the work something that you actually enjoy doing? And then what I'd figure out is like, all right, now that I understand that I like the work that I do, where's the line for me? You know, do I want to be more life? Do I want to go travel and figure out and like understand the world? Or just have fun with my friends? Or do I want to be very ambitious and go out and make a change in the world? Or like figure out exactly where the line in the sand is for you. And then after that, you can kind of build your life around that barrier or that boundary.
I think your lifestyle is actually really, really interesting. And I wanted to ask, like, do you think your life is pretty structured? Like every day is kind of set out to be, or like by weeks, by months, or do you think it's really like spontaneous and kind of like here, there's something that pops up and you just go for it and stuff like that?
Extremely spontaneous, extremely unstructured. Like I one example is one of the reasons I just keep popping in and out is because we're preparing for a last minute trip to Boston to meet one of our customers. Like we're just going for 24 hours and coming back. Like, I think my life right now is very, very much about like embracing the serendipity. And if something comes along our way, it's like we're not going to turn it away. And things come up all the time. I think that's just the reality of being in startups in the first place. That being said, I think I'm just the kind of person to really like serendipity. I really like um, you know, I really like embracing the unknown and the things that I personally am I don't like habit because if I have too structured of a life, I feel like I'm stagnating and I feel like I don't really get anywhere with that. But I do get the appeal. It's like it's really nice to have some, routine. It's really nice to know exactly where life is going to be in a year. I'm just not that kind of person.
How do you personally define success, like, in terms of basically everything?
Well, the first answer to that is I'm not there yet. I think there's two answers to this question, for me at least. The first is that um, success is just whatever I want to achieve next. It's like maybe it's getting to the next milestone, or maybe it's a goal that I set for myself, or maybe it's company growth, where we want to be in 6 months. Um, but also pairing that with the idea of never being satisfied and always moving the goalpost up, right? Like where we're in 6 months, once you get there, it's like I don't know if you guys have seen the Pixar movie Soul, but there's this really great scene where the main character gets everything he's ever wished for. It's playing with this one jazz artist, and they leave after this amazing like session. And the main guy goes, "All right, we did it. Now what?" And the jazz musician goes like, "Oh, we just roll it back. We do it again." And that absolutely crushes him because he reached his goal, and now he doesn't feel like there's any more purpose in his life because he's done what he's wanted to do his entire life. So I think for me, it's about like when we define success, it's about really just moving the goalposts farther and farther and always trying to reach higher and higher. But then once you reach that goal, it's like setting a new one. It's never being satisfied with where you are and combining that with a contentment in the journey. Like for me, I just love what I do. And, like I feel like I'm just very happy where I am right now. These goals are a way for me to push myself. But at the same time, like I wouldn't want to live my life any other way. Then there's that. So that's the first answer. It's like it's really endless and it's always going to be a journey to the next step, and I'm never going to be satisfied. So really there's no way to define success. The other more boring answer is like, oh, it's like I can make an impact on the world, I want to move it forward in a meaningful way, yada yada yada, which I'm sure is like more of the answer that you're expecting.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us today, especially with the time zone difference and the small bit of confusion that we had, amongst your busy schedule as well, for making time for this interview. And we hope to see you continue to succeed or continue to chase success in your career.
Appreciate it. All right. See
Thank
you guys
so
later.
much. See you.
Bro, I have 10% left.